Okay, hello there, and welcome back to the podcast series. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Chi and Slain. And you're down in Plymouth, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi there. And you're artists, essentially. Is that how you would describe yourself? If you kind of met someone in the pub or something?
Yeah, we're artists, but we also run a platform called Wonderzoo, which is a performance platform based in Plymouth.
Right, cool. Okay, well, we'll come on to it.
Creative stuff in the community.
Right, yeah, brilliant. Okay. So I always start with asking people a bit about their upbringing and how it was and how you think that kind of fed into where you are and what you're doing now. This is the first time I've actually done two people, so I guess we're gonna wing it and sort of see how it all sort of pans out. But I'm going to start with you then, Chi. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you grew up and where and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I was born in Japan. Both my parents were members of the Moonies cult. They had an arranged marriage because they basically got paired up by the leader, the cult leader, who was called Reverend Sun Young Moon. He chose them to get married to each other. They didn't know each other beforehand. My mum was Japanese, my dad British, and they kind of were just like two random strangers put together to live together and get married and all that. And the goal of the leader, he kind of like chose people from east and west to like marry and have babies because he believed that would create peace on earth, to unite east and west in that kind of way, like culturally. So there was lots of weddings between like Western men and Eastern women, Japanese or whatever, Korean and stuff like that. So I was born over in Japan. Because my dad's parents were unwell and he felt like he wanted to, work in England. So we moved to England when I was a baby with my sister. And after moving around like quite a few places in England and stuff, we ended up settling in Stonehouse in Plymouth when I was 4. So I basically spent the next 15 years growing up in Stonehouse and went away and lived in quite a few other places like around the UK after leaving school. Went traveling in Europe and things like that. And I never really thought I was going to come back to Stonehouse again to live because it's quite a deprived area and I didn't really have a good time growing up and I felt quite sort of alienated there. But just because of meeting my partner, and living together and everything, I've moved back to Stonehouse with him. So we live in Stonehouse now, and this is where we do the majority of our work. And we sort of we put on events here. We're very in contact with the community. And now we're actually having a community wedding on Sunday on Union Street, which is the street where we first met. So yeah, that's a nutshell of things.
I have to follow up the Mooney thing, obviously, because that's not the sort of most usual thing anyone says about their upbringing. So how would that have differed from a normal upbringing in inverted commas?
Well, my mum was in the Moonies for 10 years and she was sort of like a very well respected member of the cult. She was the housekeeper of, one of her positions was like housekeeper of the leader and things like that. So my mum was very much indoctrinated, very entrenched within their belief system, which was, I think, a very unhealthy belief system. That was kind of like loosely based on Christianity, loosely based on the Bible, but like a very like odd version. My dad, I think the fact that he was in there for like 7 years, and I think both of them being in there for so long and then having this arranged marriage with, not choosing each other, I think that basically led to like this relationship that was really unhealthy. And then they raised me and my siblings, 4 of us, in that environment where they never ever told us how they met. And so it was a very confusing environment because you sort of like you think that your parents are just like other couples, like you same as your parents. And then you sort of my mum passed away when I was 18, and it was only then that my dad told me the truth about it. So sort of, all my life until that point, I just didn't realise. But despite that, it was kind of like I was raised in a very odd way, just with my mum's strange beliefs and that would seep out sometimes, and the way that she was as a person, she was sort of like very closed off to anything artistic, not very expressive, very quiet, didn't really communicate a lot, found it hard to communicate because she didn't speak fluent English. She was very depressed, you know, she had to look after four kids on her own whilst my dad was doing a PhD and things like that. So it was a difficult upbringing, I'd say. You know, also just the fact growing up in Stonehouse back in the 90s, it wasn't quite as vibrant as it is now. And it had a very low ethnic minority demographic kind of things, you know. So my mum experienced a lot of racism when I was witnessing that. So, you know, that's, yeah. You know, having arranged marriages is just really, I would, you know, would not advise anyone to go through that process and have a family on that foundation.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of ironic that I suppose that you're talking about that a couple of days before you yourself get married, although clearly that's not an arranged one. No suggestion there.
No.
Yeah. Do you think it harmed you then being in the Moonies?
Yeah, inadvertently, like, you know, I don't think they ever, when they left the organization, that to come over here, I don't think they really sort of had any foresight, you know. I don't think they really realized that it would have a negative impact, you know, their relationship or lack of relationship would have a negative impact on their kids. I don't think they really realized, but I think, yeah, it did. I can only go by sort of like comparing my experiences with other people's experiences, but yeah, like I did suffer a lot with sort of lots of like emotional problems, behavioral problems growing up. So yeah.
I suppose the difficult thing about answering that question is there's no control experiment where you're not brought up by them, is there, to compare it to, I suppose.
Yeah, who knows who would have been otherwise? Maybe I wouldn't be where I am today. Who knows? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay. That's a good start. That's a really interesting start, obviously, which I may well return to. I feel like just returning to it a lot, but that's probably not very balanced.
It's quite a lot to say about it, but yeah, it's, you know, it is an unusual start to life, but I think like lots of people have unusual upbringings and difficult upbringings. I think it's something that can be overcome in time. You know, I think you can heal from that. So
yeah, cults in particular, however they may be defined, get a very bad rap, don't they? And often deservedly so, I would think. Yeah, so there's very much a sense of other when you think about people being in cults or sects or whatever. I think, are the Moonies still big? Because it was quite big in the 70s when I was growing up.
as far as I know, they still exist, but I wouldn't have thought to the extent as they, you know, before, because obviously now we've got the internet, there's a lot of spread of knowledge and things, and people are more aware of these things. So I don't think they're as big. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, one last thing. Sorry, I'm trying to have some self-discipline to not talk about this all the time. But one last thing. Do you think that they deserve a bad reputation? That's probably the best way to put it.
The cults.
Well, the Moonies in particular, really.
Um,
Or do you think there was something benign going on in it as well?
oh, it's really hard to tell because from what I've seen in documentaries about them, it's almost like the sense that the leader did have good intentions. Obviously, no one can ever really know what went on unless you were there. I think with cults, they provide people with like a sense of community, which they might not experience out there alone in the world. You know, that's why I think like people really, really crave community, and when that's not being offered by society, people will turn to cults, religions, ideological beliefs, and all that sort of thing. So, you know, I think there's pros and cons to them. Any kind of like collective of people, I think there's always problems. There's always good and bad.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you for putting up with my incessant questioning about that. Okay. So if I can move on to you then, Slane, can you tell us a little bit about your background and upbringing?
Okay, so I grew up with very strict parents and very backward views. Quite a lot of racism I grew up under. I ended up at a Christian boarding school, which was not fun for years at a boarding school like that, and it was really strict. It was very Christian, very all about sports and competitive and competitive nature, and not no art wasn't really embraced in boarding school. It was a little bit of art there, but it was seen as like, you know, you can have a little bit, but not much of it. It was all around sports like football and rugby and boxing and things like that. And so my younger life wasn't that much fun really, and I didn't get to go home that much, and I was away most of the time. And so when I did get to go home, it wasn't much fun either. So my childhood was not really one that I can really speak of that was fun at all. So when I turned 16, I left home and ended up living with bikers and travelers and stuff. And then I've stayed that way. I stayed that way for a number of years. Went to a lot of festivals. I lived sort of in squats and things like that. I lived sometimes in houses with friends as well, but I never felt comfortable with that. So I mainly spent most of my time with outsiders, if that's a good word, or artists, or sort of activists, or bikers, or travelers, or gypsies, people like that. I've always felt comfortable with, and I still do. Now, but we have a nice home now, which is really arty in Stonehouse. So that's my. And then like I was very unhappy. I took a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. I slept around a lot, you know, just a bit. And then, so it took me really the last 5 years, maybe 15 years. So about 15 years ago, I decided I didn't have a single qualification. So I went to university and I've ended up with a couple of degrees and a master's now. And then I created Wonderzoo. And I haven't looked back, and the last 15 years have been wonderful in a lot of ways. And then I met Chi, and I've been living here 5 years. And I feel this later part of my life has been really blessed with being really artistic and creative and making things happen and a joy in life. And I've kind of like, don't drink anymore. I'm vegan, don't smoke, committed activist for, like the planet and stuff like that. But also committed activists in the things we do. I believe in community, and I believe people can take things back from the bottom up with perspective. I don't believe in political parties and things like that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. God, yeah, yeah. Again, a load of stuff to talk about there. Really, boarding schools always kind of. I've always found that kind of concept quite horrifying. Really, I just went to a normal school, if that's the word, and went home at 4 o'clock every day or whatever. And it must have been quite a sort of lonely and disconnecting thing to sort of be shunted away from your parents like that.
But I didn't really get on with my dad. So me and my dad had never got on. So I didn't really want to go home. So when I went home, I didn't enjoy being at home because my dad was there. My dad's quite prejudiced and racist. And so,
Yeah.
but then the boarding school was also, in a weird way, quite prejudiced and racist because it was very much Christian based. And there was no one there apart from white people, basically. So I didn't see anyone of non-color for years growing up, The only sort of relief I really had is occasionally I'll go to my uncle's farm in Wales. So my uncle Ron, he was a painter, and he lived on a alternative. Well, he bought this house and he lived a very alternative lifestyle, and I have to say he really influenced me.
Yes, I bet. Yeah, good to have some kind of good role model in there, I suppose.
Yeah, but I didn't have any role. I loved my mum. My mum was a bit of a poet and stuff, but she was very unwell most of the time I knew her. And like she died at 47 when I was 21. So, and I didn't know my mum that well because I didn't see my mum hardly at all growing up. And then I didn't see her at all after 16. So I saw her laid out in the coffin, so a few years later. So I barely saw my mum growing up.
Describing that, it's perhaps not too much of a surprise, I guess, that you got into the sort of the booze and the drugs and so on, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time why I was quite on a self-destructive path. I mean, I did, and there's a lot of good to it as well. I mean, I saw a lot of bands, went to a lot of festivals, a lot of traveling around, and I met a lot of interesting people. And that opened my eyes and to be a creative person today. So there were some benefits to it, a lot of benefits. But I didn't know why I was destructive with like sleeping around and the alcohol and drugs and all that. But I know now because I've worked on myself and I've had psychiatrists and I've turned my life around and I feel well now and I feel happy and I feel like I've left that past behind. Some of it steeps into my writing.
I think it's really inspiring to talk to people who've turned their lives around. I think that kind of uh, whole process is really really lovely to talk about because of course there's still a lot of people out there who want to do that and haven't yet done it. How did you do it?
Years takes time, and not to rush it takes time and the will to do it. I think the first step for me is realizing I didn't have the qualification, and so when I walked into like I think it was a link to learning place, and I said I don't have a qualification at all. I did some basic English, maths, and IT skills, and then went on to college, and then college to uni, and then I stayed that way for over a decade, just getting one degree after another and getting first in everything I did. And I realized actually I was quite a clever person. And when I was a kid, I was made out that I wasn't because I always questioned everything, even as a kid. But I was always told off for doing that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I believe everyone should question everything and not accept any status quo.
What did you study?
So again,
What did you study for your degrees?
I did media production, so and then I did politics and art, and then on my masters, I can never say that word. Do you want to say?
Art and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, because I'm dyslexic. So yeah, when
Hey,
you're
fair enough.
dyslexic, one of the greatest degrees to study. Do you know what I mean? A word it can't even pronounce. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was my 2 degrees and masters. I did look at doing a PhD, and I probably will go to do a PhD at some point, but that went on the back burner with the world going to like with COVID and all that. So, and it's on the back burner for a while, yeah.
So you deciding to kind of get an education was the trigger to sort the rest of the stuff out, yeah?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say without the education, I don't think it would have sorted me out. The education taught me that there was a bigger world out there and an interesting world, and I wanted to be part of it.
Were you nervous? Like, when you sort of like I'm thinking back to my first day at secondary school and like how terrified I was and so on. Was it a similar kind of feeling when you decided to enter education as an adult?
Yeah, when I first walked into Link to Learning, I was really nervous. I can remember that. But then as the years gone by, I don't really get nervous anymore. Like performing, I do a performance artist, and I don't get nervous like that now. Do you know what I mean? And I've taught now as well at university level. I've taught in language schools as well, taught art management and stuff. And I actually quite enjoy teaching because I do it in a very revel way, So
Yeah,
a lot of kids have fun with me when I teach them.
that's brilliant. Yeah, it must be kind of a weird. I was going to use the word revenge, but that's not really right, is it? But it must be a weird kind of thing that you sort of didn't like school, you were told you were stupid, etc., and then you end up teaching at universities. Because I've had exactly that trajectory, and I've just thought, I just thought this is a real fuck you to my teachers, quite frankly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, there isn't a single teacher from school I can think of that, even a name I can think of that I would say, yeah, thanks, because there isn't one. But there is people from university level like Val and Pete Golding and other people I can honestly say really helped, and
Yeah,
set on a good path, but not from school level.
yeah. I did 1 year at further education college after leaving school, and the teachers were just really nice. And it really threw me because my teachers at school have been so horrible that this kind of juxtaposition of people who are notionally in the same job. It's yeah, it's quite interesting to sort of see the difference between somebody who's good at their job and somebody who's not in that situation, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay, so that's your kind of individual upbringing. So I want to sort of move on to the arts a bit now, I guess, and where that kind of comes in for both of you. But perhaps we could start with where you're at right now, and then we could sort of, work backwards as to how that all kind of coalesced. So tell me a bit about what you both do now. I presume you do stuff together and individually, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
both.
So we Slain created this art platform Wonderzoo, which is basically like an arts organisation. We do different things like events and history projects and all sorts of stuff like that. So we're working currently now on a National Lottery Heritage Fund history project, which is about archiving the Plymouth Respect Festival since 1998. So it's a 2-year project that we're getting funded to do. And that's going to be permanently housed in the Box Museum once it's finished. That's basically getting oral histories about like people's impressions of the Respect Festival, and we're trying to preserve the history of that festival so that it doesn't just get forgotten, because it's very multicultural and has done a lot to break down barriers and racism and things like that. So that's our big project that we're currently doing. So we do a lot of things like creating events in the community. We do a lot of things like, you know, park events or workshops. What else?
Game nights.
Game night, right? You know, music nights. We're going to be setting up film nights. Yeah, all sorts of any sort of, you know, things that involve the community coming together and having a good time or having a meaningful time, you know.
But we're steeped in literature.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, we're very much into literature and things like that. So just from my personal perspective, my sort of journey to this point kind of happened like when I turned 30. I just basically spent the previous 3 years like looking after my brother who was terminally ill, and he died when I was 30. And it was at that point that I was like, right, I don't have that responsibility of looking after my brother like anymore. So I want to focus on myself, because I hadn't really focused on myself like at any point in my life, really. Like I'd always been like, you know, busy doing this and that or the other, working and stuff. So at that point I was like, I want to be an artist kind of thing. And I created this like vision board, which I don't actually have anymore. It's just like a piece of paper with like all the things I want to achieve in my 30s. Like I want to be more creative, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, you know, develop myself. And I actually, like shortly after that, I became pregnant with my previous partner. And whilst I was like looking after the kids and stuff like that, because I had 2 kids, I was writing poetry on my phone, posting it to social media. Then I started doing like artwork, posting it to social media and that. And what happened, I was doing that for like 5 years. In my head, I was like, oh, one day, you know, I'd love to sort of like be really successful and things like that. But I was so isolated from any of the art world or any creative people, because I was living up in Whitley in Plymouth. But just because I was posting on Facebook, someone actually noticed my artwork and my poetry, and that person was living with Slain at the time. And so she asked me if she could use my stuff in her magazine that she was creating. I said yeah. And then the magazine was being launched at Wonderzoo. It was a Wonderzoo event for like spoken word and music and stuff. So I came down to the event and you know, just to see the magazine and that with my art in it. And that's how I met Slain. So he was doing like this performance with his friend, and part of his, when he performs poetry, spoken word and theatre and stuff, a lot of it's improvised. And he goes to me, will you rub my leg?
What did you think about that?
I said to him, yes, I will. And he goes, oh, go on then. So I sort of like rubbed his leg, and I thought, this guy's like, he's quite daring, and he's obviously, I don't know, he's obviously got a bit of a thing about me. Like he must think I don't know, he must fancy me or something like that. And it turns out that he actually started fancying me from the moment he saw me.
But on the night, I got someone else, Alan Butler, who runs Pride in Plymouth, to rub my leg as well. So I thought, I better do that as well. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be seen like you know.
Yeah, you know? I was like, oh, that's so obvious. He's like tried to disguise it now.
Yeah. There was a headline event for Plymouth Art Weekend.
Yeah, so that's, you know, that's how we met. And then, you know, very quickly we knew that we had like loads in common artistically and stuff. And yeah, it was just like, you know, we moved in, like I moved in a week later, and we've been together for 3 years now. So yeah, we've basically like been building Wonderzoo as a thing, you know, as a arts organisation in Plymouth for the past 3 years together, haven't we? With other people as well.
And then with Wonderzoo, I've done 9 years of putting gigs on every month and 9 years of putting workshops on every month.
Yeah.
So without fail. And then this year, cut it back. I decided not to do gigs every month, just have a bit of a break for the first time ever.
Right.
And I decided that to concentrate on other community activities and then do gigs only every couple months. to give myself a rest, but also to develop Wonderzoo. And I think that's really helped because we have really grown. We've got an office now in the plot with Nudge Community Builders on Union Street, and we've really grown as an organisation, and completely. And we're doing other really interesting projects. So I wanted Wonderzoo to be about storytelling and community. And storytelling doesn't always have to be gigs or performances. It can be other ways, like she said, archiving the Respect Festival. We're looking at doing another project as well that's historically, and that's working with global majorities, creating a project about their history in the city that doesn't get told. So we're looking at doing that. And we're also looking at working with Plymouth University and Pop Octopus Project on a project that goes into communities where I get to speak, or we get to speak to people that are vulnerable and find out what they think about society, rather than. So what we're going to do is interview people that never get a say about what they think, and not pose a question either. Just sit with them and get them to tell us what they think about society, and then that will form a 3.5-year research project. And when it's finished, it will be individuals who don't have a platform or say or belong to a group or belong to government or anything like that. And it'll be about them saying what they think about society. And that's a big 3.5-year project that we're looking to do in the new year. So, and I'm quite excited by that because I think there's agency in that, in a sense of like hearing the voice of people that never get to say what they want to say.
Yeah, that's a fantastic and very much needed thing. Yeah. So you're both artists stroke community activists, which is fantastic, you know, massively laudable, I would say. One of my practical thoughts is, how do you survive financially?
We do all right with the projects we do. We do generate an income. We always make sure there's a bit of an income to be able to pay ourselves. We're not poor, but we're not glowing in riches either.
The way we live as well is like we live within our means. Like we don't own a car, so we just either walk or use public transport. We live in a 1-bedroom flat, so rent is low, and our landlord keeps our rent low because he likes us.
That's nice.
Yeah, we buy everything secondhand.
Yeah, and we're very much we don't just talk about being activists, we actually live it as well.
And we're vegan, so we don't have like a massive expensive food bill due to the amount of like, you know, meat and dairy and that costs quite a lot of money. I mean, I know vegan food can cost a lot, but we just try to live quite a simple and frugal life, and we don't do foreign holidays, we just do local trips.
Yeah, because we don't believe in the idea of flying and that because of the, you know, the pollution.
And yeah, we just try to live in that way and make money from projects or, you know, artistic work here and there, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's probably I'm a bit worried I'm going to sound a bit tasteless by sort of focusing on money when you're so busy doing things that are ultimately much more important than money. But the reason I'm sort of thinking about that really is people are like watching this and thinking I could get into a bit of that, but how would I survive? You know, I mean, I know there's quite a lot of government money or as was European Union money floating about. Do you get grants and things like that?
We get a lot of funding and a lot of grants, but it's a lot of hard work. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. And we spend a lot of hours doing a lot of work, and we will never get paid for the amount of work we do. And it is like I'm pretty much on the case of doing stuff every day. I haven't taken more than 3 days off in over 3 years.
No, we did 3 days.
Well, 3 days, yeah, beautiful days. But generally, I don't get 3 days straight off.
We don't get like 5 or 6 weeks holiday a year that most average workers get.
Yeah, I barely get any time off.
We haven't taken more than we haven't ever taken a week holiday.
No, not really.
It's literally like we take breaks here and there. But...
Which, yeah, you might, yeah. It's nice to be self-employed because you can choose when you want to work. But you know, some days I can wake up and I'll start early, and it could be 1 o'clock in the morning time I'm finished.
Yeah, no, I'm self-employed, and I know exactly what you mean. You don't get sick pay either, do you? Which is
but you know, a lot of artists it's hard for them to kind of like get funding and things, because a lot of the time they only focus on the art, or they haven't got fingers in lots of pies. But we just try to keep ourselves very versatile and have like be able to do history projects, or we can do workshops, or we can do, yeah, we've got lots of things that we can do, like that we can do that's very fundable, because it's very much sort of like community benefit type things.
And
Yeah.
I've got this thing as well where I will do some things for free if it's a good cause and it's the right thing to do, but I won't just do things for nothing, because like if you have a plumber come into your house, you're going to pay the plumber. So I think every artist should be paid for their time.
Absolutely. The status of the artist in modern society is a disgrace. You know, when you look back at how, I don't know, Leonardo da Vinci's days or something like that, where there was respect, and the respect, of course, folds itself back into better art, because if you can do it full time without pressure, you will make better creativity, I suppose.
Yeah.
So,
And because I've done and run quite a lot of successful projects and won some national awards now, I do get asked a lot to look at things for people, and so I do get a lot of, what's the word for it? A lot of consultancy. I do a lot of that on the side, which I don't mind doing, and some of that I do pay, some of it I actually do it for free if I think it's worth doing. Do you know what I mean? Because I care about people and I care about the planet, and I think, you know, things don't change unless you're really making that change.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, do you have I was going to say, what's your typical day consist of? I don't suppose there is a typical day as such, but what kind of things do you fill your day with?
Well, sometimes it could be a lot of admin, a lot of meetings, you know,
making posters,
like,
or
yeah,
putting out publicity on Facebook, or sending out emails, a lot of sort of messaging communications between people if we're organizing events. I've got my kids with me half the week, so in that time I'm sort of like not so much available to do things, but Slane's pretty much he works 6 days a week.
I look at different funding streams, work with different people, go to different conferences,
building relationships, sort of networking events,
all that kind of stuff, really. And also we run a group here called the Angels, which is based in as part of Stonehouse, which is all about trying to improve this area of Stonehouse.
Adelaide Street Angels.
Yeah, so I'm on that as well, and there's a gardening group that's emerged from that, which is really good. And there's loads of gardening patches around here. Areas been taken back off the council where things are growing now, which is really good. So I never really stop, really. It's always just on the go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then sometimes we write and sometimes we paint our own stuff as well.
A lot of times, a lot of our time is just spent like discussing what has taken place in the day. So we might spend like 2 hours talking about, you've done this meeting, and he's got to tell me about what the meeting was, because I need to know what he's found out, or I need to know who he's spoken to that day. So a lot of our time is just sort of like talking about the business and different aspects of what event is next, what do we need to do today, what do we need to do tomorrow. There's a lot of all this sort of like planning in the background that people wouldn't see.
Yeah. The good thing about it is now, because we love music, we've always got music on. So if we're working away, there's always music on.
Yes, I noticed you're Levellers fans, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're old friends of
I'm
mine.
really influenced by the Levellers because I like the fact that they did what they said they do in their songs.
Yes, absolutely, which is almost unprecedented when they started doing that, I think.
Yeah, and they were influenced by Crass, and I was really influenced by the punk band Crass growing up as well.
Right, yeah, I'm familiar with Crass, shall we say? Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like you've got a lot of congruency in your life, that you are kind of living your purpose. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah,
definitely. So. Like, we're both quite visionary people, and we both sort of like have feelings about things, or have see things that we think are going to happen, or things like that. And I sort of feel like I'm living like the life that I want to live in that sense. And like, I think once you make that kind of intention to follow your own sort of personal curiosity, or your dreams, or your desires in that way, I think that life just becomes magical, and things happen in ways that you would never expect. Because when you go to school, you're basically told you need this qualification, you need that qualification. If you get the top marks, then you're going to get the best career. But it doesn't really work like that, because life has got this weird thing about it, is that I think that it's very magical sometimes how things just happen really unexpectedly and out of the blue, and beyond your wildest dreams a lot of the time. But you have to kind of be open to that and be willing to sort of walk that path, you know.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very fascinated by the whole idea of quantum mechanics, which very much feeds into that sort of take on reality, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I want to come back to something you said, which not an area I expected to go to really, but you said you met and then you moved in together a week later.
Yeah.
Did all your friends go, "You must be mad"?
Yeah.
I didn't really make it public.
Yeah.
I just sort of like, you know, we didn't really make it a big deal because
My friends thought it was mad.
Yeah, I mean, his like closer friends did think he was doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But she told her best friend that she was going to marry me within the first week or something.
Well, after we
know.
met, I just sort of like, I was in the woods with a couple of friends, and it was like 5 days after we kind of like started dating. I just said, I said, I've met the love of my life and I'm going to have a pagan wedding with him.
Brilliant.
And that was before, and then like 3 days later, we decided to get married. That was like on day 8 of our relationship.
Yeah, it took 3 years to get there.
Yeah.
It was like
When you know,
quite
you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are having a pagan wedding on Sunday, so it's not a Christian wedding. We want
It's our own style of thing. It's like
Yeah.
we've created it ourselves.
it's a very theatre performance, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's got no links to Christianity whatsoever.
It's got but it's a lot
You
of
sound pretty
performance.
kind of definite that that's the way you want it to be.
Yeah,
There's no patriarchy there. There's nothing patriarchal about it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's got bagpipes, it's got performance in it.
I'm being carried on a stretcher by 4 guys led by a
Up the street.
bagpipe player.
Brilliant. Well, I presume there'll be photos. It certainly sounds like there should.
And everyone's gonna be going up the street, and then it's comes to the stage, and we've got this pagan bit with Mama Tokus, and then we do a performance with 9 people.
Are you nervous?
No.
No, we've been thinking about it for a long time. And it was actually meant to be on the 11th of September, but we had to postpone it because the Queen died, and we felt it was like inappropriate to be creating this big party 3 days later. So we postponed it to this Sunday, but it's actually worked out better because now Slane's brother can attend, whereas before he couldn't attend. So it's all worked out better, to be honest, in lots of different ways. So yeah.
Yeah, my brother said he didn't want to do a speech because he knew it was going to be it's about 3,000 people going to be there apparently. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you've got all the people coming for the Union Street party, then you've got all the people that know that there's a wedding as well. So there's a huge buzz in Stonehouse apparently.
Well, like, Plymouth, the whole Plymouth.
The Firkin Doghouse pub on Union Street. Apparently, one of our friends was in there, and she told them that the wedding is now happening on the 25th, and they all cheered because they thought it was going to be cancelled, but they all cheered that it's still happening. And they're all, I've never even been in there.
I've been in there.
So it's like people just find out from other people, because Stonehouse has got a really close-knit community. And that's the one thing that like people don't realise, because it's got such bad reputation for crime and sort of deprivation and stuff. But people don't realise that there's a really close-knit community here, and it's a very lovely place to live.
It's been
Sorry, go.
It's been funny as well, because like, everywhere I go, people I don't know just stop me and go, "Oh, we're coming to the wedding." And they're really happy about it. And I thought the whole point we wanted to do it this way was that actually, you've got the war going on, you've got Brexit, you've got COVID, and we felt like, let's do something that puts a smile on people's faces.
Yeah, we could all do with a bit of that, couldn't we? That's for sure.
Yeah, like everyone's welcome to come. So, we're hoping for it to be a really brilliant gathering of just like, time for the community to be together, having fun, sharing memories, feeling like, oh, I was there that day, getting to see it with your own eyes, and hearing our vows, we're going to read our own vows that we've written. I think it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like to read my books some mornings, like in a coffee shop, and yesterday. We were on the local BBC radio, and I was reading my book, and this woman leaned over and she said, she was really excited to hear us on the radio, and she's coming to the wedding. I'd never met her in my life, and she was off to work. Do you know what I mean? This businesswoman. I was like,
Yeah,
all right.
she heard the show.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's cool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is like 8:30 in the morning.
So BBC Radio Devon really loved the story, and they're putting it out on their social media. And Evening Herald's done a report, right up on it. You know, so it's quite widespread now, the knowledge about it, and so it's going to be quite a packed day, I think.
It's quite surreal actually. It's come a theatre in itself.
Yeah.
It's the power of community, isn't it? Really, all the kind of work you do within a community. It's payback time almost, I suppose.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah.
That's really fantastic. Stonehouse, I should say. Sorry, I'm aware you've got to go in a second,
Yeah.
so
I'll stay on, but I'll be all right.
yeah, that's cool. Stonehouse, what is it? An estate? Is it a village, or is it what is it?
It's an area of Plymouth, but
Okay.
yeah, before Plymouth became Plymouth, it had was it Denport, Stonehouse, and Plymouth?
Yeah, they call it the three towns, and they merged together in
And then Stonehouse
1928.
and Denport became part of Plymouth. So yeah, Stonehouse is sort of it's got a mix of sort of very deprived but also very wealthy, because you've got Royal William Yard as well. It's where I grew up, so you know I never really felt at home when I was growing up in Stonehouse, but I do really feel at home now, and a big part of that reason is because of Nudge Community Builders and the brilliant work they've done along Union Street to make it like a proper sort of community hub where there's lots of people working together to make positive change. So I really just take a moment to say thank you to Hannah Sloggett and Wendy Hart for their commitment to making Stonehouse and Union Street a really beautiful place to live, that they've been doing for 13 years now, because they actually originated the Union Street Party 13 years ago.
Yeah, they did. So it's the 13th one this Sunday. Well, there's been it's a really interesting area of Stonehouse, because there's so many different groups here and artists. A lot of artists living here now. A lot of organisations running things from Stonehouse. Ed from Rio said it reminds him of early 80s Berlin, before, you know, when there was this big art scene, and you know, and all these things happening. And I can see what he's saying. Do you know what I mean? That's, you know, I think that is an element of what's going on in Stonehouse.
Do you think there's a lot of people around the country doing what you're doing, or do you feel quite unusual?
No, I think there's a lot of people doing what we're doing, but I think we do things in a slightly different way. I'd say we are different and unique in what we do. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Do you are you in touch with many other activists from different parts of the country?
I have been, and yeah, I have been. So
We're getting more linked with Totnes now, because we created a festival in June this year that was all around the idea of storytelling through different art forms. And yeah, so we actually, I just randomly, I got chatting to the Deputy Lord Mayor of Totnes when I was at an award ceremony thing, and she linked me up with the directors of the Totnes Festival, which happened in August. So they came to our event and we went to see their event, you know. So we're starting to get sort of more connections further afield, and eventually what we really want to do is link up with lots of event producers around the whole of Southwest, so that we can we can bring bigger artists in from London or something, and they know that they've got lots of venues that they can tour around the Southwest. So that's something that we've spoken to each other a lot about. But
yeah, we know all the people in Newquay and Tim King and Exeter.
Yeah.
No, a lot of different people. You know,
we'll get Ivy Bridge as well. They've started developing a little kind of art scene in Ivy Bridge with what is it? They've got a storytelling kind of festival coming up soon in October.
So I don't know much about it. I just know I'm booked to do performance, and it's meant to be children.
Yeah. So the more that what we do gets known, it seems like people are contacting us, even from Bristol and stuff, to get in touch with us to link up and share ideas and things. And yeah, so it's brilliant.
I did a show last year in London, so that was really nice. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, and I know a lot of people anyway, because you know, I did a lot of music back in the 90s, so and I toured a lot. So Right.
Bye-bye, Chi. Thank you so much for your
So
time.
that's right. So I toured a lot in the 90s, which is something I don't normally talk about. So I got to know a lot of people really in the music scene and stuff like that. So
Okay, what band are you in?
I'm not going to say. I'm trying to keep that bit out of the spotlight nowadays.
Okay, fair
All
enough.
I'm saying is I did do a lot of touring, and I did a lot, and it was all right, but it's not where I am now. So where I am now is where I want to be. I like also the thing with Wonderzoo is like we've got this community edge, but we've got this theatre edge, but it's all steeped in spoken word and literature in a way. But I wanted to like, and also activism, because part of what we do a lot of work with like the Devon Racial Equality Council, and so a lot of the work we do is and it's a multicultural group as well. There's about 5 of us, and we're all from different backgrounds. And so what we do is about trying to change the world through a bottom-up perspective, and using like different platforms to do that. But there is and always will be a very much literature and theatre element to what we do.
How much, how difficult is it to have a relationship with results when you're doing stuff like anti-racist work, etc.? Do you feel like you're moving forward? Do you feel like we are moving forward as a society? And if not, is it difficult to deal with?
Well, that's an interesting thing. So speaking to a person called Rachel, and she's from Nigeria yesterday, who's a writer and is looking to do some work alongside us. And she feels it has changed a lot. Like she said, a lot of young people don't do that, look at you anymore because you've got a different color. Do you know what I mean? And so a lot of younger people are embracing, different types of people. So I'm quite optimistic in a sense that, and also a lot of young people are embracing heavily the need to change, like with environmental needs. And so I'm very optimistic that that is really happening with younger people. And that's happened a lot because there's been a lot of activists on the ground in many different groups, and other people have allowed that to happen. And and probably I'm also very influenced by things like Rock Against Racism, from the 70s. I find it fascinating, how they went about doing that, and made that change. I mean, so I'd say it was worse then than now, but then in one way it's not. Is that Brexit, for instance? If you look at Brexit, most of the people that voted Brexit were over the age of 50. Most of the people who didn't want to leave were under the age of 40. So that says something, I think.
Something good, hopefully, for the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very positive about the future. I mean, we work and how with the Respect Festival in Plymouth, which is about bringing different communities together and showing off their cultures. And that's really heavily attended, and and really well loved in this city. And and I once said to Mark from the Levelers, actually the singer, he was going, "Oh, no, where's your organization based?" I went, "Plymouth." And it goes, "Oh, if you're doing well there, you could be doing well anywhere." Because that's a tough city, he went to me. And I thought, yeah, it is a tough city. But I think, I am optimistic, regardless with, I think some of the things that are going on in the world with Brexit and Trump and Putin and the war in Ukraine is because some people don't want change to happen. And so they're resisting it because they want some romanticism of the past, if you want, that never really existed. And so they want to go back to something that no one really wants anymore. And you can see that. And in some ways, if we can get through that and Putin doesn't nuke everyone, and then
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
fingers crossed, then I absolutely feel very positive that the world will change for the better in the future, and is on that projectual path.
Do you feel that your sort of work as a activist helps you deal with the more depressing aspects of current life?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Mostly, I mean, not all the time, because there have been, I've seen it first hand, violence and stuff towards people and myself at times. Do you mean? but I don't allow that to negatively impact on me, because I see all the really beautiful things that really do make change from so many different groups.
Mm.
So I'm very optimistic and positive. I'd love to see a new form of government that isn't Labour or Tories or Liberal Democrats. And I'm optimistic to even say this, that I think that'll happen in time, because I think it has to happen. Do you know what I mean? I don't think this kind of political sort of system we're in can continue indefinite without change.
Well, it's destroying the planet for a start, isn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah, we
exactly.
haven't got that much time to.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
I think, like, you know, I don't like, I mean, if I vote, I vote local candidates. Like, I voted Dean, who's part of the Extinction Rebellion last time locally. You know, I knew he would never get in, but I wasn't going to put my vote to a main political party either. But saying that, to be fair to most all political parties, I've had Tories, Liberals, and Labour come along to our events at times. And they're like, and it's quite funny because it reminds me of children sometimes, because they're like, oh, but they're here. And I'm like, well, you should all be together, really. Maybe make change by being together.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so, you know, I think that needs to happen more. I think there needs to be political groups, or, you know, whatever the ideology is, need to talk to each other a bit more and find some common ground more.
You say you were brought up in a very strict Christian background. Did you
Well,
buy into that as a child?
school was Christian. My dad wasn't Christian. My dad was quite prejudiced in what he believed.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
So
were you a Christian? Were you a in your head? Was that where you were at?
no, no, not really.
Okay.
No, not at all. I questioned things all my life, really.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about Mark saying, you know, if you can do it in Plymouth, you can do it anywhere, etc. The first thought I have when I think about Plymouth, and I've got friends in Cornwall, which is even more like this, is the isolation since Beeching closed down the train lines. That part of the world has been quite difficult. Not Plymouth so much. I know there's a train goes there, but it always strikes me as being quite cut off compared to a lot of places. I mean, I live in Sussex, but I could probably get to Birmingham a lot quicker than I can get to Plymouth, for instance.
Yeah,
Do you feel cut off in that respect from the whole of of England? So
not really. I don't know, and I think there's been a Plymouth's been amazing. Like 10 years ago, we had the British Art Show here. The British Art Show here is again starting again next week, I think, if I remember. So, and that's really unusual to have a big touring exhibition like that go to a city twice. So we've had it twice in 10 years. And then I was involved with others in creating the Plymouth Art Weekender, which was citywide. And then it's been like the Atlantic Project, and it's just, and so many groups that have emerged here, like Imperfect Cinema and uh, um, you know, Ray or Nudge Community Builders or Cast, you know, so many Leadworks now is just down the road, as well as a new art sort of place taking over a building. And it's just more and more like that all the time here. And it's been really amazing, actually. And there's a lot of artists that have moved down from Bristol. Bristol's supposed to be like the in place, but a lot of them are actually moving here lately to be in Plymouth. So, and the British, and then, you know, you had the huge investment in the box in the city, which is, you know, the museum and new art gallery space, which is massive as well. And so you know, and I've seen sort of being part of this from the first British Art Show to where it is now. I've seen the real change in this city for the good. Do you know what I mean? And I'm quite happy. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, to be honest. I think it's really interesting.
have you always lived in Plymouth?
No, no,
Oh,
no,
sorry, you said you were travellers and so on, so I suppose you travelled.
no, no. I've never. It's only like when I started my education, really, I wanted to stay here, and I've stayed here since.
All right.
Mainly because you know, I enjoyed my education here, and then I got really grounded in the work I do here. And I've sort of, you know, I've been doing constant work here for 10 years roughly. Every year without fail. project after project and working dominantly with different communities and really liking it, but also not just really liking it, but seeing the benefits of it, whether it's supporting artists or whether it's supporting the local community. I think it's been brilliant, you know.
I think it's fair to say that you and she are activists, in the sense that you're way more active than than the average member of society in terms of the arts and activism. Um, how do you see that kind of in a perfect kind of future? How do you see that developing? Because if you get to the point where everyone's an activist, then no one's an activist because there's nothing to stand out about, if that makes sense. So
I'll retire and then I'll become set
it's a
out.
tough one. There's a tough question to try to put into words. But what I'm trying to say is really, where do you go next? Once activists are doing stuff and communities getting involved, what happens then? What's the next step?
I don't think I'll ever stop doing stuff because, like, if for instance things massively improve and things massively change, which is the hope of everyone, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I would probably work more on my own stuff. Sometimes, like, you know, I write a lot. You know, I'm a poet and a writer, performance artist, theatre as well. I write a lot of theatre and music as well. And so I don't always get that time to develop that side so much.
Yeah.
And I do performances and theatre as well, and I put on theatre. So I'd probably, and I have a real passion for theatre and performance. So that's probably what's going to be my PhD. So if I did move away from it, it'd probably be more academia and then probably developing theatre more.
I'm quite interested. Obviously, I'm reasonably familiar with music, theatre, etc. Performance art. I'd like to home in on just a little bit, really, because it's one of those kind of open-ended saying. It's one of those open-ended labels, really. I think. So, what kind of stuff would your performance art, or has your performance art done when you've done it?
Okay, so in the last few years, I've done taking in plays at the Barbican Theatre and then taking in performances in people's front rooms, 24 plays, short plays or pop-ups in the last 3 or 4 years. And the fun ones I've really enjoyed most it's not been really theatre stage stuff. It's been more like we've been commissioned sometimes to develop ideas and then take it into the community. At one point, like me and Chief, for instance, we did this where I got dressed up in this very weird red dress outfit, and then Chi was dressed up as well. We went into people's flats, literally into their front rooms, and we were dancing with them and singing with them, and it was an amazing experience, you know. And then we've done like recently we did like a Romeo and Juliet meets the enormous crocodile mashed together. And then we added a new piece in it called Dialogue with Madness, which is all about COVID in the middle. And then at the end, we put a veteran piece in with a veteran talking about his time as a veteran. And then it was also layered in with music in it as well. And then there's a bit in it where we sing "We Will Rock You" by the Queen and the rock band, and the audience sing it back to us. And then there's puppets in there as well, like crocodiles and things like that. And so kind of like to develop things sometimes where it's a bit quite interactive with the audience and the audience get involved, but there's a lot of surrealism in there, and a lot of fun,
Like it, yeah.
and a lot absolutely chaos and madness. And sometimes we kind of like loosely rehearse it, but a lot of it is also quite spontaneous on the day as well.
Right. That's absolutely fascinating. Do you think you have a lot of fun doing it?
Oh yeah, I love it, especially because like the audience love it, and I always find someone in the audience that I'm gonna bring them into the performance. I normally tell them before so they don't have to worry, but I don't tell them what's going to happen to them during the performance. Something will happen to them, they will be run into the performance, and they go along with it and they love it. And it's really nice when you can get, and like we did the Ocean Studios the other week for Hope and Heart exhibition, fantastic exhibition, and we were, you know, getting the, I mean, we badly sung it, "We Will Rock You" by Queen, but they were all singing it back to us, and it was brilliant with crocodiles waving, you know.
Okay, I'll try and picture it. Yeah. So it's Wonderzoo. What if people want to find out more about Wonderzoo or even get involved? What do they do?
You can look at our Facebook page or look at our website, or we've got a YouTube channel as well. Yeah, we never really promote the YouTube channel that much, but it is there and it's got lots of the videos on there, different things. And yeah, and or you can get hold of me as me, do you know what I mean? Or we got an email as well. So you know, there's a lot of ways to get hold of us, and we're very approachable, and we always talk to everyone. So we always, I end up in endless meetings with anyone who ever wants to talk to me, or you can Zoom me, go for a coffee, whatever it is.
So you're very open to being
Yeah,
approached.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I like that anyway, and I think it's good to be that way, to be honest.
Are you looking for anyone? I mean, are you looking for creative people or just people in general? Is there any kind of qualifications on a informal level needed?
No, no qualifications, just a wacky mind.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
wacky mind, and you don't mind it being a bit odd at times.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Cool. Okay, I think I'm sort of probably coming towards the end. Is there anything you think we haven't covered or that you'd like to add?
Not really. It's just that, you know, I think the thing with Wonderzoo, if you want, is that yeah, we're a performance platform, but we're steeped in surrealism. But also there's a lot of comedy and politics in there. But the main thing, a lot of the things we like to do is put a smile on people's faces, make people laugh. And I think you can change the world a lot in that way.
Absolutely. And whether or not you change the world, it's an extremely noble thing to do, to put a smile on someone's face, I would say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I personally, on a personal level, I enjoy every sort of moment where, whether it's like people smiling or having a laugh, or people come up to me, and they do come up to me and say that I've made them think about this, or they've taken up painting or taken up writing. I mean, the youngest, Tommy, he's 14 now. He started writing at 12 because of Wonderzoo. So it's really amazing. So things like that, I think, yeah, it's worth doing.
Absolutely. Well, everything you're doing sounds very worth doing to me. I'm going to stop recording in a second, but I'll stay on Zoom just to sort of say thank you and
Okay.
so on
Yeah.
afterwards. Okay. But yeah, on a sort of formal level, I'd like to just wrap it up by saying thank you so much for your time, Slade. Thank you to Chi as well, who's off on the school run. It's been a really fascinating talk, and it sounds like what you're doing down in Plymouth is really, really vital and quite beautiful. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.